Going to take 10% off.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming out today. Feel free to grab Phoenicia if you haven't. My name is Ryan Lanier, and I'm the president of our Federalist Society chapter here in South Texas. I will say before I get to our event, I want to make a quick announcement. We have our first general meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. in room 416. So if you're new or you're a returning member, please come out, bring your friends so we can make sure we get you all signed up and involved in all of our great opportunities. Now, the Federalist Society is an organization of over 90,000 judges, lawyers, law students dedicated to reforming the current legal order. We are committed to the principles that the state exists to preserve freedom, that the separation of powers is central to our Constitution, and that, in the words of John Marshall, it is emphatically the province and duty of the judiciary to say what the law is, not what it should be. In the furtherance of this mission, we sponsor opportunities and host events like this one to promote effective participation in the public policy process. If you would like to learn more about the Federalist Society or our chapter, please come see or a member of our board after today's event. You can see some of our board members wandering around who will be up here after the event. Without further ado, I would now like to introduce our esteemed panelists, all of whom are proud graduates of South Texas.
That's the point.
First up is Justice John P. Devine. He is an Associate Justice on the Supreme Court of Texas, a position he was first elected to in November 2012. He previously served for 7 years as a judge on the 190th State District Court here in Harris County, and for 9 years as an appointed special judge for the Harris County Justice of the Peace Courts. A native of Indiana, Justice Devine attended Ball State University, graduating in 1980 with a BS degree in Business Administration and Marketing. Following graduation, Justice Devine became a Texan and entered the corporate world of Shell Oil Company in Houston as an analyst and later worked in various corporate and project-oriented positions. While at Shell, he was accepted by South Texas College of Law, graduating with a Juris Doctorate in 1986. Chief Judge Reed O'Connor is the Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Texas. He began his professional career as an associate at Vincent & Elkins in Houston before serving as an assistant district attorney for the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office. Chief Judge O'Connor later served as Assistant United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas in the Fort Worth Division and was twice detailed by the Department of Justice to serve as counsel to the U.S. Senate Committee on the Judiciary and then Chief Counsel to the Subcommittee on Immigration, Border Security, and Citizenship. He joined that court in 2007 after being nominated by President George W. Bush and became Chief Judge in the Northern District last month. He's been a member of the Committee on the Judicial Branch of the Judicial Conference of the United States, the policy-making body for the federal judiciary since 2009. A native of Houston, Texas, Chief Judge O'Connor graduated from the University of Houston with his bachelor's degree in 1986 and from South Texas College of Law with his JD summa cum laude in 1989. While at South Texas, he served as a member of the South Texas Law Review. And last but certainly not least, Judge Drew Tipton is a district judge on the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas. Prior to joining the bench, Judge Tipton was a partner at Baker Hostetler LLP in Houston, Texas, where his practice focused on complex labor and employment and trade secret litigation. Before joining Baker Hostetler in 1999, Judge Tipton was in private practice with Merrick, Griffin, and Naup, I believe, LLP, and Litter Mendelson, PC. Judge Tipton also served 5 years in the United States Marine Corps Reserve. Upon graduation from law school, Judge Tipton served as a law clerk to Judge John D. Rainey of the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas. Judge Tipton earned his BA from the Texas A&M University and his JD from South Texas College of Law. And our moderator for today's event is Professor Josh Blackman. Professor Blackman.
They know who I am.
No
Hello.
introduction needed.
None needed. Thank you all so much. This is maybe one of my favorite events for the year. We have 3 distinguished jurists who are sitting in the same chairs you're sitting right now. Literally, these rooms have been renovated in 40 years. So these are the same exact seats. Am I right?
Yeah,
I'm right. So these are the same seats. So one day, one of you might be up here. And each path to the bench is unique. And I want to talk to the judges today about how they became a judge, how South Texas prepared them for this, and what advice would they give to a bunch of young law students sitting here today. So I'll start with Justice Devine. Now, you are in the 190th District Court, is that right?
That's right.
And if my memory serves, Chief Judge Elrod was also. So if anyone's going to become a member of the high apex court, start with 190th District Court.
Now, Judge Elrod was an upgrade.
No. We are very fortunate. So just tell us a bit about yourself and how you became a judge. How does one become a district court judge? How's that happen?
Yeah, well, there's, as I was once called by the chief of the Supreme Court, he said, Divine, you're an outlier. and looking at my background, I came to Houston back in 1980 with everything I had in the back of my 280ZX. And I'd been hired by Shell Oil Company as an analyst in the business side. And I figured out in a hurry that I wasn't going to, rise in the ranks of the corporate world without an advanced degree. And Shell being a very technical company, and me not very good at math, I chose the law route. And so I went to law school really with the purpose of having that on my resume as a tool for the corporate world. I had no intention of practicing law, really. I just wanted to be a good CEO or CF, whatever, within the company. And of course, the idea of being a judge, that was nowhere on my radar, unlike some people. I know some of my colleagues wanted to be a judge from the day they entered into law school, like Judge Brown, district judge in Galveston. He had it all mapped out. I wasn't smart enough to figure all that out. I just decided that I would use my law degree to benefit the company and prosper in that role. So obviously, after I left law school, I did go into a law firm. After a while, I resigned from Shell, and I was in a special department there that they said, look, the only way out of here for you, because of your special training and unique skill set, is through the door. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was somewhat harsh, but I took them up on it, and I left and went into practice here in the world of bankruptcy, and really didn't like that. And so I ended up going to work soon thereafter with Brown and Root. Brown and Root was a worldwide engineering construction company at the time, one of the largest in the world. We had projects all over the world. And so I worked there for 8 years, kind of quasi-legal, had project managers and lawyers and finance people and all around me and so forth. So my world was very much a world of delegation and management on the various projects around the world. Soon thereafter, there was this race here because in Texas, judges are typically elected, unless, of course, there's a vacancy and then the governor has a right in Texas on the state side to appoint. I chose to do it the hard way and run against an incumbent, which I've had to do my entirety of my life in politics and in the judicial branch. And so I ran as a write-in candidate. Well, you had a snowball's chance to win as a write-in candidate in Texas, but I did get 84,000 write-in votes. So it would happen to be like the most in history of Texas ever. And so I came back 2 years later, ran during a George Bush first run, and was successful to get on the 190th District Court, where I stayed for 7+ years. My path is a little different, and I can contrast that because my colleagues, all of which were appointed, they usually began their career in government. They would come out of law school very highly ranked, great people, and the governor or the AG typically would pick them up, and they would have these relationships over time with many folks in government who they worked with. And I even had one of my colleagues appointed himself to the Supreme Court. And that was Justice Boyd, who just retired. We always laugh at that because it kind of seems preposterous. But he was a great judge, but all of them had some relationship with the governor, the AG, what have you. Usually that's who it was. Governor Abbott, for instance, has appointed the last 6 members of our court and due to have another one here.
Any minute now.
Any minute now. So again, my path was different than that. And so what I hope you take away from that is no matter where you are and what you want to do, because I can assure you that you may have some idea of what you want to do, but the chances are extremely high you're not going to do that. And the law degree will give you so many opportunities and doors to go through. It's really, just leave yourself and have an open mind as you get to that point. But do well, stay out of jail, of course. That doesn't seem to do anybody any good, except maybe me.
He's been arrested before.
And so,
Several times.
but that was before. I was a judge. And so, there's another example of maybe what not to do. But, in getting a law degree is an adventure. And I wish you all well as you progress in your studies and in your individual careers.
Thank you for that. Now, we talk about contrast. Now, Judge O'Connor, you did go the government route. You spent a number of years as a federal prosecutor. You worked on Senator John Cornyn's judiciary staff. Talk about your path through South Texas and onto those careers.
Yeah. So I sort of Forrest Gumped my way into this position. In other words, as the justice mentioned, it wasn't by design. I did not do it by design as well, but I started across the street. I don't know if they're still there, but Vincent Elkins used to literally be catty corner here, and I started.
Louder, a little bit louder.
I'm sorry. And so I started with Vincent Elkins in their litigation group, and I was there for a number of years. Vincent Elkins had back then, I'm sure they still do, some really good senior trial lawyers who knew what they were doing and would be retained on big sort of bet the company type cases and were ready to go into the courtroom and litigate it in front of a judge or a jury. But I saw early on that kind of work at Vincent and Elkins didn't lend itself to a lot of trial experience for people who were just starting out. The business model was kind of changing. Their rates were going up nowhere near what they are now. When I started, I got a $5,000 sign-on bonus, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I have $5,000 less some taxes. I have $5,000. So, and so I met my wife here at South Texas, and we were married at this point. She started as a tax lawyer at Exxon. And and so she was working there. I was working at Vincent Elkins, and then they wanted to start moving her around as they did in those days. And so they first wanted to move her to the corporate offices in Dallas or Las Colinas. And so I looked to move with Vincent Elkins to the Vincent and Elkins Dallas office, but a very good friend of mine whom I met at South Texas was working at the Tarrant County DA's office at the time. And so I touched base with him and said, hey, I'm coming up your way. I'd never lived outside of Houston at that point. I hadn't really been outside of, the Houston Metroplex then. And so he said, well, hey, have you thought about coming on at the DA's office? And I said, well, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't know anything about criminal law, and I wouldn't know what in the world to do. And he's like, no, you would pick up on it. And so why don't you give it a try? So I said, okay, well, I'll apply. And so I applied then and got an interview, went and had a screening interview with a panel of the lawyers at the office, came back home, and then got a letter from them saying, thank you for applying, we'll keep your resume on file for about 6 months, and we'll let you know. And I was like, well, okay, well, I've got this Vincent Elkins thing lined up in Dallas. And then the next day, I got a call from Tim Curry's secretary or administrative assistant, whatever they called him back then, saying, Mr. Curry would like to talk to you. You want to come, would you like to come up for an interview? And so I did, went up, and it was a heck of an interview back in those days because he was kind of a politically incorrect, chain-smoking, corner office, sort of Howard Hughes-like, didn't go out in public a lot, like the antithesis of politicians now. So it was really, I didn't know if I was on candid camera or not. It was really sort of an interesting interview. And so I left there, and he said they'd let me know. And the next day, at like 7:30 in the morning, it should have been a sign, 7:30 in the morning, I got a call from his secretary wanting to offer me the job, and I accepted right away.
Did you do the math?
It was a 2/3 pay cut.
Wow.
And I accepted right away, didn't talk to my wife about it, and she didn't talk to me for a week after it was over. We've got to talk about these things, you can't be doing this. And I said, well, you knew I was coming up here for a reason. And so I started at the DA's office, was there for about 5 years, and then moved over to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Interesting enough, the South Texas friend sort of paved the way for me there at the DA's office. Another South Texas lawyer did at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Fort Worth. Same thing. I sent my resume, I interviewed with them, then I got a letter from the first assistant saying, thank you, we'll keep your resume on file for 6 months. And then a week or so later, I got a call saying, we'd like to hire you, and you got to let us know within a day or two because Congress is going to cut off, we think Congress is going to cut off funding and we won't be able to hire you. And so I accepted that job. My wife started calling me a job hopper at that point.
Did you talk to her this
I
time?
did ahead of time. And so I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office for about 5 years there in Fort Worth, in the Fort Worth Division. Handled some Dallas Division cases back then as well, but they were mostly in the Fort Worth Division. And in these two jobs, got just a ton of trial experiences, more at the DA's office than at the U.S. Attorney's Office. The DA's office, at least back then, are in trial all of the time. And then moved over to the U.S. Attorney's Office, still in trial quite a bit. And then my wife's company, Exxon, moved her to D.C., Northern Virginia. And so I moved, I got a job, essentially I got detailed, which just means on loan. DOJ would, the Fort Worth office would pay my salary, or the Northern District would pay my salary, but I would work in Washington. And so I worked in Washington, first at DOJ, Maine, EOUSA, which is a component of Maine Justice, but I was only there for a few months because in the fall of 2002, the Republicans retook control of the U.S. Senate. So President Bush had lost, President Bush had won in 2000, obviously, and during that congressional session, Senator Jeffords from Vermont had switched from being a Republican to an independent caucusing with the Democrats. And so what that meant, the Republicans had a 50-50, the Democrats had 50 senators, Republicans had 50 senators, the Republicans had control because the vice president was Republican. And then when Senator Jeffords switched and caucused with the Democrats, it threw the balance to the Democrats. And so in the fall of 2002, President George W. Bush, the Republicans regained control of the Senate. Senator Cornyn actually won in 2002, for instance. Didn't flip a seat, obviously, but had a bunch of people come in. I forgot the ratio, but the long and the short of it is the Republicans were looking for more staffers. Then Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Hatch, was looking for someone to do criminal and constitutional law issues for the committee. And I'd met someone, and they knew about the opening, and gave my name to the person in charge, and so I interviewed with them. And before I went down there, I told my wife, I'm going for an interview. If they offer me the job today, I'm taking it, okay? Are we good? And
Your wife was okay with that?
she was okay with that, and so I went down there, and sure enough, they offered me the spot, and so I started working with Senator Hatch, doing just policy issues. So Vincent Elkins, general commercial litigation as a low associate up to my fourth or fifth year, whatever it was. And then the DA's office, I started at the bottom. I was a fifth-year lawyer at that point, or fourth or fifth-year lawyer at that point, and they start you at the very bottom, or did back then. Worked my way up, and the same thing at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so I had a lot of that either civil litigation experience or criminal trial experience. And then when I moved over to the Senate, started doing just policy issues. And so it was a drastic change, really, in work. But it was very interesting. Got to meet a lot of people. And that's really when I thought about putting in for an open spot, if an open spot were to come in. Because part of what, in addition to the policy issues, I also worked on judicial nominees who had a background like mine. So they came from either U.S. Attorney's Office or had a heavy criminal background or government background. So I would end up working on those kinds of nominations. So that's really when I started to think about it. And then Judge Fish, Judge Elrod, Chief Judge Elrod knows Judge Fish, and you all might as well. Judge Fish decided to take senior status in 2000. Well, yeah. So he announced a year out that he was going to take senior status on his 65th birthday, which was the fall of '07. And so I put in for it, and it's kind of a rigorous process with the screening committee, with a bunch of lawyers from across the state on the screening committee, and you meet with them, and then they send up the evaluation of all the candidates that they interview to the senators, and then the two senators get together. In Texas, the two senators, not every state's like that, but in Texas, the two senators get together and make a recommendation to the president, and I worked my way through that process, met with the senators, and they recommended me to President Bush. And I was able to follow Chief Judge Elrod a few months later and make my
Were you a voice vote?
Mine was unobjected, without
Those
objection.
fools.
Yes. Yeah.
Voice vote, not a voice vote.
Yeah.
Thanks.
A voice vote is where they're so unobjectionable, they don't even have to take a count. They just say, all right, he's good.
Yes. Exactly.
All right, thank you, Judge O'Connor, for that. Not a voice vote. So Judge Tipton, your story is also a little bit different. You served in the Marines, you came to South Texas, you had a very successful career in private practice. Tell us about your path, please.
Right, so I was born and raised in Angleton, Texas, which is about 40 or 50 miles south of Houston. My dad was a Baptist preacher for 33 years in the same small town. If you grow up in a small town, you know that preachers' kids are either really goody-goody types or they're me.
Or they have to go to the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so I had a good time in high school and went with all of my friends to Texas A&M. And high school was super easy for me academically, and then I went to Texas A&M, and nobody made me go to class, and I figured it would happen kind of naturally that I would get A's, because that's all I'd ever gotten. At the end of my first semester, I had a 1.7.
I didn't realize you go that low.
Right, yeah. So at the end of my second semester, I had bounced back strongly to a 2.1. So at the end of my first year, I had 30 hours at a 1.9. I was on academic and financial aid probation. I say that not proudly, a little bit of levity, but just to let any of you know that if any of you have struggled, you've had a bad year or two, you can bounce back from it. You just need to keep going. So our parents split us up, In fact, one of my roommates I never saw again, they went to high school with. Kept in touch with the other one, joined the Marine Corps, was on active duty for a couple of years, came back, and it's really amazing what Marine Corps boot camp will do to your maturity and your discipline and your motivation. So I finished pretty strong at Texas A&M after that, and came here and went to South Texas, and interned for Judge John Rainey over in the federal courthouse, and he was just an amazing guy. One of his closest friends was Sim Lake, who is Chief Judge Elrod clerked for. He was in our chambers a lot because they were really close. And I have to tell you, that was when I knew I wanted to be a judge, but I was looking at two people that I thought were, I'd never be able to match, and still think that to this day. Those two are just what you would imagine that you would want a federal judge to be. And I thought, man, I got to see that for a year. And I thought that was amazing. So I went into private practice, practiced in Victoria for a little bit, where Judge Rainey was the judge, and did labor and employment law. Came back here and went to work for Baker Hostetler, where I was practiced for 20 years, predominantly labor and employment law. But you start to get kind of priced out of the run-of-the-mill discrimination, harassment cases as you get more senior. So my last 5-10 years, I was doing trade secret theft, non-competes at the really elite kind of C-suite level where they can afford your rate. And so did that until I applied for the bench. Now, in the meantime, I was on the FBA board. And those are things that if you're interested in, getting to know people who know the process, getting, FedSoc is a good way. The FBA is a good way. I was on the FBA board with Judge Hainan and Judge Atlas, who's just a tornado of energy. So they're just amazing judges to be around. And when one of the spots opened up, I applied for Galveston. I thought, that won't be very competitive. Brazoria County is where I'm from. Angleton, it removes to the Galveston division. So I thought, that'll be fine. I'll apply for that. I didn't even get invited for an interview to this committee that Chief Judge O'Connor was talking about, the Federal Judicial Evaluation Committee. So that is comprised of appointees by both of the senators who will screen, a stack of applications for the federal bench, and they'll make recommendations of a handful to interview for a spot. And I didn't get selected. And I said, man, I'm not nearly as cool as I think I am. I didn't make it for Galveston. You wind up getting sitting Supreme Court Justice Jeff Brown gets the spot. The other applicants were Judge Charles Eskridge, who sits now in Houston, who has a fairly impressive resume on his own, and another sitting Supreme Court Justice who is, still on the bench. So I understood then why I didn't get selected for that particular interview, and I thought, what do I need to do to try to get on the radar of people? Because I hadn't done anything other than practice law, been active on the FBA board, and network a little bit amongst the lawyers here. And they told me about this committee, and I got to know a couple of the chief counsels for the senators, and they said, you need to meet the committee. Some of them will talk to you, some of them won't. And if you do that, that way they can put a name with a face where they get a stack of resumes for this position. So as much as I could, I knew a couple of people on it. They introduced me to a few people. And by the time the application for the spot for Judge Lake came open, I had applied and got selected to come in for an interview. There were 6 of us. And by that time, I had met about 2/3 of the people on the committee. And one day I had driven to Austin, to Dallas, to Tyler, and to Houston all in the same day to meet with people one-on-one for about 30 minutes. And that was a heck of a day. But if you're committed to it, you got to do it. And I might not have gotten it, but that's the kind of effort that it took if you aren't really connected to people because they don't know you. And so that committee is fairly impressive. I remember looking at Steve Sussman and David Beck and several retired Supreme Court justices and just the best and most elite trial lawyers from the state, from El Paso to Beaumont and from Amarillo all the way down to Brownsville, and they're asking some pretty tough questions. So I think it's a good process because you need to be able to answer those questions. And so they make recommendations to the senators, and then you go and meet with both of them. And so I had the good fortune of going up there and meeting, and had a couple of heart attacks sitting down across from Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn, and answered their questions. And then I got a phone call a day later saying that they were recommending me to the White House. And that's a whole different story, going to meet with the White House counsel. You're meeting with people who have just finished clerkships with the Supreme Court. They're probably in their upper 20s, and man, they're proud of how smart they are and what their resumes are. And so they'll ask you just the weirdest hypotheticals, Eighth Amendment hypotheticals. But the good thing is that the White House trusts the Texas senators because they take the federal bench so seriously. And several of them, quite frankly, had clerked for Fifth Circuit judges that were in the room. And so it was, some of them were Texans, but it was a fairly, it was an incredible process to go through, and it's different for each nominee, but I think a lot of it is that you can make your own luck by just deciding that that's what you want to do and being relentless. And, it was the path that I took.
So a common thread is that there's no common thread at all. Except South Texas JD, that they got together. But they all had very different paths to the bench. I want to pivot now, talk about being a judge. How do you run your chambers? How do you interact with your law clerks? How does one be a state Supreme Court justice?
Well, as a trial judge before the Supreme Court, so we're the highest last resort appellate court in Texas, where our decisions are appealed only to the U.S. Supreme Court, so we avoid the Fifth Circuit. And so
there's one case, never mind.
there's always one case. And so, having been a trial judge, I had a certain mentality. Rule one in being a trial judge is to do justice. And you had to learn to think on your feet. I tried, during my 7 years, about 350 jury trials, and then a countless number of bench trials during that time. So I got a lot of great interaction with lawyers and having to think on my feet during trial and all of that goes along with that. And so being an appellate judge is entirely different. I sort of look at it as the old man's trade. And you had to be young and vibrant and, energetic to handle the trial bench back in the 90s where it was wild and woolly. Some of the greatest lawyers in history were alive at that time and would appear in front of us. So you had to be on your feet. Trial judge or Supreme Court justice, we get hit with about 1,000 requests a year, petitions to look at, and we choose somewhere about 10 to 12% of those as being important to the jurisprudence of the state of Texas. And so we have to read all 1,000 of those petitions and begin our own process to determine whether or not this is important to the jurisprudence of the text. That's really the key, is to be able to take this volume, read it on first blush, make that initial decision if it's something we want to hold or is it something we just deny outright. Interestingly enough, all of us, and we have no numbers in mind. Each year we begin a new year of picking cases. We don't have a set number or keep track, or at least I never have, and nor do my colleagues. But we always seem to wind up with about 60 to 72 grants out of those 1,000 cases, and then a number of what we call PCs, which are per curiams from the court. And then, of course, once an opinion is circulated, you may have a differing view of it. You may write a dissent. You may write a concurrence, depending on what, the court does. So my staffing consists of 2 senior attorneys. These are senior appellate lawyers that have worked usually for big law. In my case, Baker Botts and Thompson Knight. Very fortunate to have them. It used to be that you would only get 1 senior attorney, you'd get an executive assistant, and you'd get 2 law clerks. And I experimented around on what works best for me. And I even had one year, Sarah was there, when we had 3 law clerks, which, can be, if somebody is a little behind someone else, you got to spend extra time training. So I didn't like that number. It was a lot to do administratively. Sarah was no problem, by the way. So, we gave her special projects and so forth. But so I settled on this. I did need an executive assistant, so I have 2 senior attorneys and 1 law clerk. And it's all heavy-duty stuff. So everybody's expected to pull their weight. I give my law clerks an extra challenge to participate in some opinions, assuming that their writing skills are good. They will get more assignment, they will get more responsibility, ultimately in culminating in conference to stand up and be questioned by my colleagues. And that's, so far in 13 years, I've only had one that had one difficult moment. The rest of them would rise to the occasion. Many of them, interestingly enough, have come back once they've entered private practice and have argued before the Supreme Court. I had one guy come back and be successful in 2 cases in 1 year. And then another guy with Beck Redden has come back, 4 or 5 times, and I think he's been successful about 90% of the time. So his familiarity with my colleagues, his familiarity with the process, it's just an invaluable experience. Again, I think that's something I inherited as a corporate guy who chose to delegate. When a judge does that, you stick your neck out. You run the risk of perhaps embarrassing yourself with your colleagues because, these are young law clerks. You don't know what in the heck they're going to do, really, at the end of the day. But we train them, we watch them, we pay attention to their writing. I'm sure you were redlined a lot with Julie and so forth. So it's a great experience. I rely heavily on my staff. I make ultimately the final decision. My approach perhaps is a little different than my colleagues. I tend to sort of pick an outcome that I think is right after years of business. After life's experiences, you learn between right and wrong. You want to do justice. And, there's been a few cases where I've had to speak up and write dissents, a number of dissents that seem to get attention more than the regular opinion, but that's okay. Again, you have to do what you think's right. I'm not here to please anybody. I'm here to do what I think is the correct way to handle a matter, even if it means sometimes you get criticized for it. As we're always going to get criticized, no matter, because there's there's a winner and there's a loser. And so, but I do work with 8 other incredibly intelligent people from the corporate or from the business world who've, dedicated their lives to this. And so out of all branches of government, I could submit to you easily that the judicial branch in Texas is the most collegial branch that you'll ever find. And it's a family amongst us because we over time, you do learn how everybody thinks, and you can almost pinpoint it, depending what the issue is, what the outcome could be amongst your colleagues and so on. So
That's awesome. Chief Judge O'Connor, the same question, and maybe talk a little about being chief. What does it mean to be? We have a chief judge of the Fifth Circuit, we have a chief judge of the Northern District. We're hail to the chief when we enter the room. So tell us about your chambers and what it means to be the chief judge.
Okay, well, so I'm a trial judge at the Federal District Court, so unlike Justice Devine, I'm by myself with the cases that are assigned to me. I have 2 divisions. I'm assigned to the Fort Worth Division, and I am assigned to handle the Wichita Falls Division, so my caseload tends to be a little higher than my colleagues who just have one division, but it's both criminal cases and it is civil cases. I probably have 350 cases, maybe a little higher. Now it's probably, if I had to guess, I quit looking at it, the numbers never go down, so I just quit. And there's no reason for me to look at the statistics anymore, but it's probably 70-30, 70% civil, 30% criminal cases. And I have 3 law clerks. I soon will have an additional one now that I am the chief judge. They assign you an additional law clerk. So I have an additional law clerk starting in October. I generally hire from the law school, so the law schools, I have, so I have 3 there now.
A South Texas grad, might I
A
add.
South Texas grad who's working now in Fort Worth. So 3 from law school, and then the 4th law clerk who will start in October is completing his first year at Jones Day here in Houston. So he's going to move up for a year and then I think come back to Jones Day. And the way I handle it is I divide the case, I divide the docket up. I'm changing it a little bit now with the 4. So I divide the docket up, and the law clerks are in charge of managing the docket of the cases that are assigned to them. And so they ensure that the docket is moving forward. And by that I mean every day. I haven't been online much today, but I am sure that as I'm sitting here right now, I have any number of agreed motions to extend this deadline, agreed motions to extend, to have remote participation in mediation, agreed motion to do this or to do that. And so they will look at that, they'll send me an email and a proposed order. When I get home tonight, I'll spend some time going through those orders, getting them signed and sent back so that they will be docketed. And then they are also responsible for managing the non-agreed portion of the docket, which is anything you can imagine. So Addie started today, so she probably, she's assigned a certain portion of the docket. She may have a brand-new lawsuit filed today on her docket. She's undoubtedly inherited a portion of the docket where she has pending Rule 12 motions, pending Rule 56 motions, motions to strike experts, requests for Daubert hearings, proposed jury charges submitted to me in advance. I ask that those be submitted in advance so I start reading it and working with them before the trials. And I actually think this is true as it relates to her. I had a jury trial, a civil jury trial a month and a half ago, and the post-trial motions, motion to confirm the verdict, set aside the verdict, are due now. So she will be working with me on pleadings on a case that went to trial that she didn't get to sit in on and know about that, and everything in between. And so she's got to manage that portion of the docket with me to keep those cases moving, because and her colleagues will do the same. Keep all those cases moving, because the goal is to get out the door roughly the same number of cases that you get in the door at any given term, because if you don't do that, if you don't get them out the door, you're all too young for Seinfeld, but there's a funny sitcom years ago and where they have a very lazy mailman and they talk to him about it, and he says to the main character, Jerry, the mail never stops. And that's what I feel like with these cases. These cases never stop. And so you've got to be able to do that. So they're in charge of managing and then working with me to decide how to resolve these issues, and then working with me to prepare for trial so that I can go into the trial court, to sort of the wild west of the trial court where things come at you fast and you're busy making decisions and trying to get the case to a jury and getting the jury to return a verdict. So that's essentially the life of a district judge in the federal system. I've only been chief judge for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, not very long. So one thing I know, when the chief judge of the circuit wants a meeting, if you're traveling, it doesn't matter. You show up at 11 o'clock, and thankfully we've got a great relationship with one of your most known professors here at this school. He let me use his office to meet with the chief judge and the other chief judges in the full circuit to deal with some really important but sensitive business. But as chief judge at the district court level, I'm not sure of the circuit, I do get the extra law clerk because you are required to take on a bunch of administrative duties. Very surprising to me, all these administrative duties that I thought were, that just happened, I guess. For the last 17 years, I just thought that happened, and no, it doesn't just happen. It really does take time. So I had the meeting today. Friday, had about an hour and a half Teams meeting as well related to some hiring, personnel issues in the circuit. And so I think the way I would describe it, the Chief Judge could probably correct me if I'm wrong, or I may come back in a year or two and tell you I was way off base on this, but I think the way I would describe it is that the Northern District or the district courts across the state or across the country are managed by the district judges. And so that's kind of, I would analogize it to a board of directors. And so they're managed by the board of directors. And then the chief judge is the chairman of that board. And so I'm in charge of making sure things keep moving, and then making sure when something is important enough that I've got to bring in the other judges or convene a meeting, that I do that and don't leave them out there not knowing what is going on with something that's pretty important. And so that's kind of how I would describe it 2 or 3 weeks into the job.
All right, that's fantastic. So Judge Tipton, I'll give you the same question. I'll vary a little bit. You've been a bit vagabond. You moved around. You've been in.
Vagabonds, is that the right word? Vagrant? I mean, it's a little harsh.
It's in the Articles of Confederation. It's a word in it's a term of art. Tell us a bit about how you manage your.
Josh.
He cracked himself up.
You did.
I try. Tell us about your chambers, how you manage your work. And I should know, by the way, Taylor is here. Hi, Taylor. He reads. So 2 of the former Tipton clerks here.
Right.
Judge O'Connor's clerk Addie just started this week, and Ryan is clerking for Justice Devine in about a year or so. So how do you manage your chambers? How do you manage your law clerks?
So I will say first about being chief judge, his hair was jet black 3 weeks ago. And this is what's happened in that short period of time. And I would also throw in, just as an aside, one of the unexpected benefits of this job is just how great the other judges are. I mean, I didn't know hardly any of the judges, and now I'm really good friends with a lot of amazing people that just kind of were quiet, people that I was afraid of or that I was formal with. And now they're colleagues, which is fairly amazing. And it's great. I can't tell you how many times I've called Chief Judge O'Connor and said, hey, I've got this weird situation, and with 17 years on the bench, he's crossed it, or Judge Lake or Judge Rainey. So that's been fairly amazing, and that's been part of the way that I run my chambers. I'm a little different in that I was originally assigned, so the Southern District of Texas goes from Houston and Galveston all the way down to the border, which is Brownsville, McAllen, and Laredo, and Corpus and Victoria are in the middle. So I was originally assigned to Corpus and Victoria, and then when Judge Hughes retired, I took over his docket here. I kept my Corpus and Victoria docket, so then I had a full Houston docket at that time. At the very same time, Judge Alvarez went out of the draw in McAllen, which is on the border. And so I went in and took over a good chunk of her docket, and then went into the draw, which I remain today until there's a replacement for her in McAllen. So I can tell you, having been in 4 different divisions, quite all at the same time, being a federal judge in Houston is not even remotely similar to being a federal judge in McAllen. I mean, they're barely the same job. On the border, it's probably 90% criminal, a lot of drugs, guns, and immigration cases. And then the more north you go, the more civil cases are filed. So in Corpus and Victoria, it's about 50-50. And then when you get up to Houston and Galveston, it's about 90% civil and 10% criminal. And the criminal can be a lot more complex. It'll be a lot more white collar. There's healthcare fraud and things like that. So it's just, very, very different dockets. And so when it comes to the criminal docket, I tend to handle the overwhelming majority of that. It's guilty pleas, it's sentencings, it's presiding over trials. I'll need clerk help for motions to suppress and hearings that I'll have on that, but by and large, the criminal docket is on the judge and on the poor case manager that has to manage all of the settings that happen. And so I have a case manager and 3 law clerks who are here today. Didn't know that y'all were following. I'm a little intimidated, so. So it's, as I said, it's very different. The way that I run my chambers is, especially since I'm on the road so much because in all of these different divisions, is that I did the split them up, like the odd and even thing for a while, but I decided that that was not very efficient because it just drives me crazy to have old motions. And so what I've done is I'll have the clerks, whoever finishes the order on the oldest motion, they're always doing the 3 oldest motions. And so I don't want the terrible old motion that nobody wants to just be neglected. Because if you had an odd clerk and an even clerk, sometimes you look at that and you go, man, that motion's terrible. I don't want to touch it because it's going to take a month and it's just, I don't understand it. And they tend to get neglected. And so I've got it where I've got 3 law clerks, whatever the oldest motion is, unless I've got an emergency, jump on it, as we call it, the jump on it deal, and something pops up and I've got to get something knocked out quick. I do have them assigned if I go to trial. So if there's a trial, they've got to get me ready. They've got to get all the objections to the jury charge, the motions in limine, and we'll work on those together. But by and large, those are all hands on deck. To get me ready for trial, there's a bunch of exhibit objections. I want everybody's thoughts. One thing that I do differently is that I require collaboration. When I clerked for Judge Rainey, I had one of the dockets, odd or even, I don't even remember now. And I didn't talk to my co-clerk very much about it, which I thought now in retrospect is a really waste of a brilliant mind on some things. And sometimes you can kind of get siloed or tunnel vision. And so what we do is they'll work on an opinion, they'll run it by their co-clerks, and they'll do some red lines, and that person will ultimately send it to me after it's gone through the co-clerks. And then I'll have at it and send it back, and then I'll ask them, we have it broken down into 3 law clerks doing 3 different things. Case site checks, record site checks, and then usage and grammar. Each one of them, and they send their red lines back separately. And that's their opportunity to tell me where they disagreed with the co-clerk without hurting their feelings. They can say, I think this is wrong, we talked about it. But that way I can get, because you want collegiality in it. And so everybody that I've had has, by the time it goes out of my chambers, every opinion has gone through all 3 law clerks twice and through me twice as I go back and accept or reject all of those record sites and the red lines. And so I put a lot of emphasis on writing and being a grown-up. I don't want to micromanage. I don't want to babysit. I need to trust that you're working on the things that I've asked you to work on. And I don't really care where you went to law school. All I care about is that you're a brilliant writer. That's it. The rest of the stuff you'll get to see, you're going to get to see trials. You're going to get to work on trials. You're going to see some terrible lawyering. You're going to see some brilliant lawyering. And so the one thing that I guess I can also say about the difference in the divisions is the different tone from the lawyers. Outside of Houston, it is much more collegial, and I think it is because it's a smaller bar. So the criminal bar gets along great. The prosecutors and the defense lawyers, I never have a problem with them. And I've got way more of those cases. I've got 600 or 700 criminal cases just in McAllen alone. And then, and I'm sentencing 150 people a month in McAllen. And so, but I never have a problem with them. They get along great. I'll come down and I'll come up to Houston, and the civil lawyers who have clients that insist that they play nuclear, just hardball, and they may never see that opposing counsel again, they won't cut each other a break. And so they just play the hardest of hardball, and they, filing motions for sanctions, doing everything they can to just amp up the volume. So what I've done to try to get that down, the law clerks are always helping me on those, is I'll set those for hearings. The first one of those that I have, I'll rule on whatever it is. A discovery motion is normally done. I want to take the depo first, or the lawyer called me a mean name in a depo or something. And then I'll say, every other discovery hearing we have, your clients are coming and attending in person, because I want them to see what they're paying for. And it's really amazing. I hardly ever get a second one, because it's normally about the lawyers. It's hardly ever about the case when it's petty. And so that tends to kind of tampen down the amount of the thing that I think is least pleasant about the job, which is bickering lawyers. So anyway.
Very good. All right, let's do a quick lightning round, okay? One sentence. What advice would you give to first-year law student John Devine?
Dedicate 110% of your time to your classroom. Talk to your colleagues. Have a study group. And don't look back. Keep your mind open. Keep an open mind for whatever you may encounter You're going to have classes you don't like. Do the best you can in all.
All right. Advice to 1L Reed O'Connor.
Find a senior level law student who can give you advice on the path through law school, because you do need to be successful in law school.
All right. Advice to 1L Drew Tipton.
I would say try to intern for either a state judge or federal judge so that you can see what it's actually like, what you're going to be doing, and then hopefully land a clerkship. Just about every federal judge was a law clerk to a federal judge, it seems like.
Okay. Second question. What's the biggest mistake you think you've made?
Trying to go to law school and work full-time.
Fair enough.
Probably wringing my hands over decisions. You'll be, as a lawyer, as the justice mentioned in his opening remarks, this degree will open lots of doors for you, and you will be presented with lots and lots of opportunities. Consider the opportunities, make your best decision, move on, and never look back.
Judge Tipton.
Right, I would say dwelling. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to bat 1,000. You're going to get some wrong, and I think probably what I wanted to do was bat 1,000, and so you try to overthink and overwrite, and so being able to just, as the chief said, we're about keeping the trains running, keeping all of the cases running. If we hang up because we're trying to be perfect, it does a disservice.
Okay, last question. Book recommendation. What book would you recommend to students to read? Bible. Good answer. Judge O'Connor?
Probably Scalia and
Garner?
Thank you.
See, I was going to say that. You're such
Okay.
All right, so why do I go last?
Judge Tipton?
Judge Elrod, have you written anything?
She has, actually. She's one of the authors of the new Heritage Guide to the Constitution published next week. So
read that.
read her essay on Article 3.
That's actually very good.
And buy it. So,
All right, questions from the students. What questions do you have for the judges? Don't be shy.
Yes, go ahead.
What advice do you have for a first year out of law school graduate?
Oh, okay. Anyone?
So I have been putting first, second year lawyers, to the extent their law firms will permit it, which has been shockingly a bit of a challenge, as pro bono counsel to criminal, CJA, court-appointed criminal lawyer. And the trade-off, when I talk to the the appointed lawyer, the trade-off is I will give you this young lawyer, and you can assign this young lawyer research assignments, draft motions or response assignments. Of course, you're on the hook, so everything needs to be run up through you. That'll free you up to run your practice, go talk to your client, do a whole host of things. In return, you have to give this new lawyer real trial experience. These are the cases that go to trial, not the 150 sentencings. That wouldn't waste anybody's time with that. And so it's been a real benefit. I do that because really the main reason I left Vincent Elkins was I was worried I would not be a trial lawyer. If I'm in a litigation section and I don't have much trial experience, I don't feel that, I just don't feel like I'm going to be worth anybody's pay. And so I really have that stuck in my memory. And so I've been really doing that. Two or 3 weeks ago, I don't, Gabby's probably not here, but I literally had one of these trials. A prison guard accused of improper conduct with a female inmate, went to trial. He said he had a defense, went to trial. I did this, and a first year, he had clerked, first year lawyer at Fulbright, and you could see once I know it's going to trial, put him on there, you can see the written work product from this side of the case increase drastically. And he cross-examined a critical witness, took a couple of other witnesses. I give them extra time and split the final argument. He did opening final argument. The CJ, the criminally appointed lawyer, did the final argument. And the guy now is a first year, I guess a second year lawyer, first year at Fulbright, now has a federal jury trial under his belt.
Other questions, Jeff? Sean?
In hindsight of all of your experience, how much would you advise students put, how much value should you put on experience versus making as much money as possible when you graduate?
Good question.
That's a great question.
Fair question.
Yeah, experience. The money will come. But experience, as you're young, my goal was to fill my resume up with a diversity of experience and challenges. And, I had no idea I'd wind up on the Texas Supreme Court, where those life's experiences have helped me in handling a multitude of various legal issues and so forth. But yeah, by far, the money is tempting, but give yourself a chance to absorb every great experience you can get your arms around.
And Judge O'Connor walked away from V&E to work for the Tarrant DA's office. That was a sacrifice.
I was going to say, there's no reason you can't do both. You can go to big law. I will say that one of the big deceptive trade practices in Texas is that when people call themselves trial lawyers at big law, they really kind of are settle lawyers or they're motions lawyers. And so they get motions for summary judgment ruled on and they tend to settle shortly thereafter once you give them a firm trial setting. But if I were you, find out who, if you get a job at a big law firm that pays well, figure out who goes to trial and get on that team. And make yourself available. And if the only way you can do that, we already had a full team, is do it as a freebie. I can't tell you how many people at my law firm at Baker Hostetler made it to year 7 or 8, and they were kind of coasting, enjoying it, and all of a sudden they're up for partner, and they make partner, and they've never taken or defended a deposition. And all of a sudden they freaked out, and they went in-house because as a partner, you have to take over a case and run it. Well, they didn't know how to do that. And so what you need to do is make sure that you're marketing yourself in internal clients. Figure out who the partners are, who goes to trial, tell them I'll work late, I'll work weekends, I'll do whatever you need. The grunt work, I just want to get it into the courtroom as much as possible. So I think you can do both. It's a lot of effort. So.
Good. Other questions we have? Yes, Gabby.
I have a question. I just wanted to ask y'all, what do you think makes a good advocate? And I think we're very blessed to have, an appellate judge here and also 2 trial judges. And I wanted to ask, how is a good advocate different in a trial situation versus an appellate situation?
I think that's for you.
Well, we're not advocates on the Texas Supreme Court. There's always that underlying temptation to take on an issue and really push it through with your colleagues and be an advocate amongst your colleagues about a position. That's fair enough. But a true advocacy comes standing before 12 men and women from the community to get your case. And as a trial judge, you get to see the best. You get to learn what works, what doesn't. You may come into it with ideas. I was a plaintiff's lawyer, believe it or not, another indicia of being an outlier on the Texas Supreme Court. And so I had a lot of different trial, state and federal court trial experience when I came aboard. But in my work today, I'm only somewhat of an advocate with my colleagues, and very respectfully, Mike.
And Gabby, I would, you go.
No.
Gabby, I would just offer up, in terms of someone in your shoes in a couple of years now, that preparation, understanding the facts of what you are advocating in great detail, and understanding the legal principles involved in great detail. Those really are the advocates who are successful. And that probably is up at your level and Judge Elrod's level as well. I don't know, what do you think?
So I will tell you, those are absolutely critical. But I'll tell you just in terms of style, presentation style. So I remember going to the Court of Appeals and arguing, and I remember watching somebody who I saw make a presentation, and they were very professorial, and I was impressed with them. They just had it down the way that they could deliver it, and I thought, man, I'm going to do that. And so when I got my first appellate argument, I went to do that, and it was so awkward because it's not me. I was trying to be somebody else while I was talking, and I just can't be that person. This is how I talk right now. If I was in front of a court, if I was arguing in front of them, this is exactly what you would get, which is, I don't know if it's informal, but it's not formal. And so what I would encourage you to do is figure out, if you're sitting around a picnic table having a beer with somebody and you're trying to persuade them on how to do it, some people will have a glass of wine and it will be a very formal presentation, but don't try to copy someone else. The jury picks up on it. They get uncomfortable when they see lawyers or advocates be uncomfortable. It's kind of like when somebody's trying to sing on stage and they're not good and you're kind of squirming for them. It's that. So what you want to do is figure out how are you comfortable, because then you're not thinking about how you're presenting, you're thinking about what you're presenting.
And I think, I don't know what it's like today, but when I was here at South Texas, I was never on a team, but every semester there were what we called then intramural mock trial moot court opportunities. I say intramural, just you grabbed a partner and you put your hat in there and they drew brackets up, and I think you started like on a Friday, and if you win you did Saturday, and Saturday evening was a championship. And that really is an opportunity in this setting to practice or to learn what is your style. How are you comfortable speaking about these issues as an advocate?
Trial advocacy is a huge thing here. I mean, it was
No.
the greatest in the country.
right.
Came out of South Texas.
I think we are at time. Thank you so much, judges.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and a great event, and thank you especially for the judges and their law clerks, both our panelists and our two guests. Thank you all for coming out today. And be on the lookout for emails from us. Again, we have our first meeting tomorrow. Hope to see you all there. And as you see in the back, we've got a great lineup this semester, so I hope to see you around.
Thank you.
Let's put some pictures. I got to get on that.
Are you really today?
I never came to